As you study the new draft College and Career Readiness Standards for English, Language Arts, and Literacy, I've tried to point out for you some of the major changes and some of the things that are staying consistent with the current standards you're teaching right now. You can access the draft standards on the Department of Education website by clicking the link on the homepage that takes you to the review process. You'll see here on this screen that you can access the documents for English Language Arts in both an Excel spreadsheet and a PDF, and they're divided into grades K through 5 and 6 through 12. The way the standards are organized is just a little different, so I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to understand what you're looking at. The standards are listed with generic headings, so standards may appear under a different heading than where you're used to seeing them. All standards are in a list under the strand to which they belong. There's no indication if the draft is a standard, if it is a heading, if it's an indicator, or if it's a subskill. So you might have to think about how the standards might be organized. The standards are also not always listed in a developmental sequence. So you might be thinking about how you could reorganize standards so that they make logical sense for instruction. Here's an example of what the spreadsheet looks like when you open up 5th grade. You'll notice on the right-hand side it says English Language Arts, then 5th grade. There's a reading strand and there's a language strand. The reading strand includes what would have been Standard 1 in Indiana standards or the reading foundational standards in the Common Core state standards. Then you'll notice that each standard has a number, and then the content area is described. The content area is where you might see a heading, a standard, an indicator, or a subskill. When you're providing your comment, it'll be important that you reference the strand and the number of the standard upon which you wish to make comment. In English Language Arts, some of the major findings are that, with very few exceptions, the content and skills from the Common Core state standards have been subsumed in the new draft College and Career Readiness Standards. The literacy standards for history, science, and technical subjects are subsumed in these draft standards. The language standard, asking students to spell correctly, however, has been removed from the standards. And the writing standard, which asks students to produce clear and coherent writing, in which development and organization are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience, has also been removed. If we look at each of the strands, language, speaking and listening, and writing all have nearly the exact same content from Common Core subsumed in the draft standards. But there are a few minor additions that have been added, such as this 8th grade standard. Standard 6 in language states, identify and use parallelism in all writing to present items in a series and items juxtaposed for emphasis. You'll also find that there are 2 to 4 additional standards that have been added for speaking and listening in almost all grade levels. In grade 11 and 12, for example, students will analyze the media's impact and strategies used by the media. In writing, students will also be asked to complete resumes and applications in high school. If we look at the reading literature findings, this is where you will see the greatest differences between the standards that were previously published and this draft set of standards. In a few instances, minor wording changes blend a Common Core standard and a 2006 Indiana standard, which provides for greater specificity. In some grade levels, additional standards, somewhere between 1 to 5 standards, have been added. The reading literature standards subsume everything that was in the Common Core, with a couple of exceptions, and include many of the rich literature topics and skills to this new set of standards that have historically been part of Indiana standards that were not part of Common Core. This domain of standards adds more standards than any other domain. So this is the domain I would pay particular attention to if I'm looking at having time to teach everything that is in the standards. Also looking at the reading literature standards, you'll see that a couple standards have indeed been removed. At the high school level, the standard that asks students to delineate and evaluate the reasoning of seminal U.S. texts, including the application of constitutional principles and use of legal reasoning, has been removed. and the standard that asks students to analyze 17th, 18th, and 19th century foundational U.S. documents of historical and literary significance has been removed. Again, I would read the literature section for your grade level carefully to ascertain if content has been removed that really should be included, and conversely, if content has been added that is not essential for your grade level. When we look at the reading informational text findings, again, the Common Core state standards for informational text have been subsumed in the Indiana College and Career Readiness Standards. In some grade levels, an additional 1 to 3 standards have been added. For example, grade 3 adds the following standards: distinguish between fact and opinion in informational text, distinguish between an author's purpose in various genres of informational text, and restate and follow simple, multi-step written instructions. When we look at the reading foundational skills, the wording in several of these standards has been changed from the Common Core expectations that teachers have already been teaching, and the wording often makes the standard less rigorous and more vague. By pulling out specific examples, we actually are losing the context of how a standard should be taught. For example, that we are having students respond to multiple books has been removed. If we look at another example in grade kindergarten, Phonological Awareness Standard 2C has been changed from blend and segment onsets and rhymes of single-syllable spoken words to orally blend the onset and the rhyme in words. And when we look at Phonological Awareness Standard 2D, the previous standards have stated students should isolate and pronounce the initial, medial vowel, and final sounds, or phonemes, in 3 phoneme or consonant vowel consonant words. That standard has been changed to identify the beginning, middle, and ending of sounds. I would pay particular attention at the kindergarten and first grade levels to the level of rigor in the reading foundation standards. Please take time to review these standards and make sure your voice is heard. Your recommendations, your comments, or spoken testimony at the hearings taking place next week are important to this process and making sure that Indiana has the best standards, allowing you to teach high-quality curriculum in your classroom every day. Thank you.